And we are live. I am joined today by none other than Bradley Vorhees. What's up, Brad?
Hey, Jeremy.
I don't
Good.
know if
How are
you
you?
don't have a website or a book for sale or anything, do you?
No,
No,
not
no.
yet.
But you did go to the hearings. You did go to those the congressional hearings and saw them testify live, right, in person.
Yeah, I live in Severna Park, Maryland, just right between Annapolis and Baltimore on the coast there. And so it's just a kind of a quick ride into
Right down,
DC.
yeah, right.
Yeah.
Right down the road. So we're going to get into these hearings. There's a couple mysteries we had during the live chat and afterwards and on Twitter, and some battles that went on. Um, as people know, Dark Journalists went on that night, and then I don't think he went on Alex Jones the next day, and I watched most of it. I think I watched all of it, but I don't remember him repeating the whole stuff about this James Clapper fellow. But Raskin got his bandana apparently from Stevie Van Zandt. So that's his rock and roll hero. If anyone's wondering why he was wearing the bandana, people were saying he had cancer. I couldn't find any evidence to back up the claim that he had cancer, but I did find that he got the bandana from Ronnie Van Zant, and Stevie Van Zandt, and that's Leonard Skinner. So that's pretty awesome. But we're going to move along to this James Clapper mystery. There's apparently a doppelganger in the crowd, as people have pointed out. Yeah, this was misidentified by Dark Journalists first, who pointed out that, and a number of people in the live chat also said it resembled James Clapper, but it actually ended up being this guy who looks just like him, from the AIAA, who doesn't give interviews either apparently, and he's. I only believed it when Ted Rowe was like, "This is my boss, and I'm working under him to study UFOs for a legit aerospace organization." And I'm like, why have I never heard of this guy before? And I'm glad that I did hear about him. And if it was, it cost a mistake to learn about someone new and get introduced to more names within this whole intelligence community network. That's always a better thing. James Clapper would have been an interesting addition to that conference, indeed. But I'm kind of relieved actually to find out that it was not him. I was a little bit worried, and then I fed into the Dark Journalist's certainty that it was him, and now Dark Journalist is saying, no, we need to just there's enough other intelligence spooks in that room, and I'm but basically it's like, you bluffed us, or you bluffed yourself. I don't know.
Yeah, but that dude was right in the front row, I mean, like, it's totally reasonable to think that it would have been him. I mean, I'm glad somebody said it wasn't.
So it's an honest mistake, and like, I shouldn't have doubled down on it, because I was just convinced that these guys were, because there was a lot of people saying it, and I didn't believe. A lot of were counts that I didn't believe on other things, but it ended up being confirmed that this guy's a doppelganger, and there's been a lot of mistaken identity cases in history of the intelligence and conspiracies theories and other stuff like that before. But it's interesting. This guy Charles McCulloch, the former Inspector General of the intelligence community, is now Grusch's lawyer. So it's kind of that's an interesting connection, and what McCulloch is doing as Grusch's lawyer remains to be revealed. Grusch, of course, couldn't say much of anything during the hearing. Did you agree, Brad? It was like he couldn't answer anything as outside the skiff, and he kept saying,
my understanding is that he's sort of constrained, right? Like, there are only certain things that he can talk about that he's gotten approved through the Department of Defense. And so I thought he said some pretty significant things, in the sense that there was, at one point, I think AOC asked him, or maybe it was Tim Burchett asked him, whether or not he could give them names of people and names of the companies they worked for and identify the contracts. And I think he told AOC at one point, he said, I can give you a list of willing witnesses, neutral witnesses, and hostile witnesses. So it's like I can name a lot of names. And then he said, that he had given all of his the companies and that kind of stuff. He said that was in his the report to the IG, and the IG took that to Congress. So I think at some point they got to sort out. Congress needs to sort out what it's got, because if I'm not sure what the IG took. You say they took the report to Congress. I don't know if they took the whole thing or they just took some information to Congress, but I think they need to sort out what they know. And then, of course, if they let that guy anywhere in their skiff, I was like, hey, man, why don't you just give him like a tour of Air Force One or something? That's skiff.
No, it's
crazy.
Like he kept saying there was going to be this skiff after party, and then I guess they revoked his security clearance, so he couldn't go in the skiff or something.
Seems kind of dirty. Like
it seems like almost like they silenced him before he talked, because he kept saying, "Oh, I can name some of the contractors and all that," and he was going to go back and meet with all these congressmen and start giving them all these high quality leads apparently, and then he was blocked from doing so. I mean, this is going to
it was kind of weird. I mean, it's
what's the point of having another hearing? I mean, what's going to be the next hearing if they're going to have one? I mean, if it was legit, don't you agree that we should call the head of Material Command down there, the head of the Office of Naval Research Labs, a number of these guys who would be in the know for these types of issues, and get them to testify under oath, right, like these guys did, that do we have these stuff? Do these programs actually exist? Have you heard the rumors too? Do you have any?
And I think what there's is really interesting sort of divergence of concerns among folks who were at the hearing and heard that stuff. Because what you just said was, let's get the people who know if there's alien ships or if there's reverse engineered technology and stuff. But what Congress is really concerned about, I think, is why is the Department of Defense not telling us that this is happening, right? We do not have any oversight. We have no idea about any kind of reverse engineering programs or anything. And the spirit of and the intent of those contracts and programs I don't think it's that alarming to Congress. What they're upset about is the laundering, and Grusch referred to it as the tradecraft of essentially laundering money to aerospace companies so that they can conduct unauthorized, activity, doing the reverse engineering, doing crash recovery, but they're doing contract activity that isn't in a contract that they're aware of. And so the tradecraft he was talking about was essentially like if they're doing contracts for tanks, right? Then they're overcharging on the tank contract so that they can fund the unauthorized activity that they're doing with the reverse engineering of, say, like maybe alien spaceships or whatever.
The B-2 bomber, for example, it went like 5 times over budget, and they underdelivered, by so much. So you have to think about these projects where there's billions of dollars that are going down this pipe, and there's got to be something going on there. Oh, hey, Michael.
Hey.
So,
just got a welding helmet on.
Yeah, of course, nice, man.
So, well, yeah, I just want to jump in there and it's I'm concerned. It's looking like there's some deal struck that back in the 60s, 70s, whatever it was, you got what's it?
Well, I think it went back even earlier. So he says the 1930s is apparently when they recovered this thing. Grusch said that, right?
Yeah, he said, I think the first UFO that anybody really saw, the first time these crafts sort of appeared, I think he said was in the 30s. He said the Italians got it, and I guess the Vatican helped us scoop it, which is pretty cool.
When was that?
Free FOIA
Yeah,
wasn't
when
it
was
the
that started?
1970s, right?
Yeah, there you go. So what I'm thinking is they had FOIA, and then they were like, well, what do we do with all this government stuff we want to keep secret because there's always going to be FOIA? And they said, let's put it in private companies like Battelle Memorial Institute and holding companies. And the problem there
Well, Bush
is
already did that in '74 when he took over the CIA because he was hiding all the JFK stuff when he took over for the House Select Committee on Assassinations
like
was '74. That's when they were investigating all
So-
this stuff. So it's all around the same time.
So they have tech transfer programs into private companies, and then usually you're supposed to you have ITAR and ear and export control, and usually you have some oversight there. But I'm concerned that for the most secret stuff, maybe they got rid of that oversight to help keep it secret because there would be a paper trail for ITAR and ear still that people could potentially follow, and then you're just on the honor system with those private companies that they're doing the right thing there at that point, pretty much. There's no oversight by Congress or anything.
I think you're exactly right. And like a year and a half ago, I did an episode of Sonic Gravity called Disclosure Supremacy. And that's where I said, hey, I think what's really going on is these aerospace companies, if they recover something, it goes to this aerospace company. And that's how they're going to duck, FOIA. And so that's why I don't know if you, one of my buddies, Grant Levac, he does the Unexplained Rundown. He's an Aussie, and he's really into, tracking down stuff with FOIA and everything. And my suggestion to him was go for the contracts, find out what the contracts are, getting cut for. And,
Absolutely. So
he got some good. I don't want to steal his thunder, and I don't have his latest update. But he's running down contracts and the money, and I think that might be a backdoor to actually finding out, maybe another angle about what's going on. And the thing about the laundering, though, which I think is really bothering Congress, because we know the Pentagon. I mean, the legislators are always moaning about how the Pentagon can't pass an audit, and like 60% of their shit, they just don't know where it is. Sorry, I didn't mean to swear. I don't know if this is like on a swear-free, like bad language. Can't have it. Let me know.
It's not too many kids watching. Some people might have kids, and
Yeah, I'll be nice.
Semi-educational, so just a few swears are fine here and there, but it's like let's just keep it, for the classroom.
Yeah, for sure.
Oh, by the way, the welding mask, he's fixing a furnace. There's a little problem with the furnace that we have, so we're going to be using we have two different furnaces. We're going to try to cook up that lanarkite glass, the LK99, which is that room temperature superconductor. If you guys have seen the paper out of South Korea, so we're going to talk deep into that and go deep into that towards the end of the show, and I'll get some more people on who are hopefully working on that as well. But yeah, Battelle is interesting. It came across them in my research. And also, Lockheed Martin. Everyone says, but Lockheed Martin was, Martin Marietta Corporation, and we already talked about their whole anti-gravity file. Kurt Jamungle did a whole documentary on this on his channel. If you haven't seen, go to TOE Kurt and type in Bonson, right? Bonson.
He did an anti-gravity thing?
He did a whole quantum gravity exposed right here, it's called.
Oh, man. I have to check that out.
Yeah, if you haven't seen this, go to Theories of Everything with Kurt Jamungle and check out Quantum Gravity Exposed, the dark history of anti-gravity. And I started on this research path about 10 years ago. Eric Weinstein, dove into this and found a ton of great stuff. And awesome leads. He went deep into all the physicists that met at the Secret Gravity Conference in 1957 that Feynman allegedly went to under the pseudonym Mr. Smith. So Richard Feynman went to this conference. This is like super secret history. And Ed Witten's father, Lewis Witten, was involved in this Martin Marietta Corporation, and they were studying anti-gravity. It's all in here, documented very well. So go check this out. Ton of research and study went into putting this together. So if people haven't seen this already, this is what Congress should probably watch first, and then maybe a documentary that hasn't been made yet that goes deep on Battelle, because as you know, Battelle made the demon core and the plutonium cores for the Manhattan Project for the atomic bomb. So they had the highest security clearances and the best metallurgists and scientists in the world at the time. So if they recovered this thing in the 1930s, as people know, they where would it have gone to? It would have gone to two places back in the 1930s that could have stovepiped into this, right? Future organizations. So the first place it would have gone is this private nonprofit institute, Battelle Memorial Institute, which already had the infrastructure set up through the Atomic Energy Commission to hide secrets from the Manhattan Project. So they already had everything there to stovepipe and hide and whisk this thing away like it was two points higher than the atomic bomb, as people said it was, classified. Corso said that, and the MJ-12 documents both said that it was 2 points higher than the Manhattan Project, the atomic bomb. So that's interesting when you look at that history. There's two companies. So Battelle is number one on the list because they're the metallurgists. They would have had the metals capability and the ability to analyze these alien metals. And number two is Marconi Systems Incorporated, which was the UK. The UK's company.
I never heard of them.
So there's an interesting thing you can look up called, ever heard of the Marconi scientist death conspiracy?
No, I never did.
That's one of my favorite conspiracies out there. It's called the GEC Marconi scientist death conspiracy. A bunch of these guys that died in like James Bond type assassinations. And they were all working on this, they all told their wives they were working on, like, they'd found free energy and we're going to have like making tons of money with this, and it's going to change the world. And then they go to this meeting, they leave to go to this meeting, and they all went to this meeting in the same town and end up dying in car crashes on the way there, or like in just weird ways around this one town.
Oh man.
So
that sucks. That's bad. That's really bad.
It's really bad, dude. And no one's ever really solved the deaths. They've mystified British intelligence and a bunch of other people who have investigated them. But they now, and this was back in 82 and 1990. So apparently the history with this company goes back to, the days of course, Marconi himself, the British physicist who first sent radio waves across the Atlantic from Marconi Beach right here in Cape Cod, Massachusetts, which is about 2-hour drive from where we are here out in Worcester.
Wow. But what you said about Battelle, I did an episode called Roswell Through the Wormhole, and in it I concluded that because of the way that it was sort of if you listen to that episode, I can't remember that, but one of the airmen who loaded the debris on the plane, said it was absolutely a crashed saucer, and they loaded the debris up on the plane and took it to Wright-Patterson in Ohio, which is right across the way from Columbus, Ohio, which is where Battelle's headquarters was. And so I in that episode I talk about why it wasn't Project Mogul, why it wasn't why we know it wasn't the Air Force's excuse, I think in 94 was, it's Project Mogul, which was a balloon program that was intended to pick up radiation in the atmosphere from nuclear explosions across the world. But we knew that was a lie because Project Mogul was out of like Alamogordo or Los Alamos or some other place in New Mexico, and the debris went to Ohio. So if it was Mogul, it would have gone back to where the Project Mogul was being run out of, which was in another place in New Mexico, but it went to Ohio. So we know that it went to Battelle. And so anyway, for sure, like, yeah, I'm 100% with you that it's this.
Yeah, so I'm pretty well convinced on. I've been pretty well intrigued by that memory foil myself, and you know, what's interesting is that it's in my list of the my UAP summary thing, which I actually sent to Michael Shermer for him to prepare for. I'm going to hopefully do a debate with him here this week or
Cool.
next week, moderated by Brett Weinstein. So that will be cool. I'm looking forward to that. But he cited this guy Charles Moore, and I got to look more into more. I got to look more into his stuff, if it's a pardon the pun. But I know about Alvarez, and he was a big debunker and stuff, but he's saying that Moore developed this foil that was like the memory foil, and he's got apparently some papers and stuff on it. But I would love to see it demonstrated, and you know, where's this stuff today, and you know, what's going on with that, you know? So yeah, that'd be interesting. You know, maybe he's got some insight on this memory foil that we didn't have or didn't know before, but you know, I like the stuff about metallic glass. You know that I think this guy,
Superconductor.
Soy. This was the dude. He put out this video on the showing the metallic glass and this amorphous metals. It's not a superconductor, but it's it has very high. It wasn't developed though until the 1970s at like Caltech. And it has a really high elastic and structural strength, you know, coefficient and stuff. So yeah, that's a cool video if you want to learn about metallic glass, because that's the closest thing with the material strength that I know of that would have compared to this. So he might have some foil that can, you know, crinkle up and then uncrinkle itself smooth again. Maybe it's mirror smooth again. That'd be cool. But if I'd also be interested if it was the same material that had these structural mechanical properties that were so hard to cut, burn, and break. You know, that's a curiosity still. But you know, regardless, see if the government did, if anyone did recover, you know, things like this that fell from the sky, I'm sure that the government has programs to track, you know, down satellites or, you know, anything that falls from above or comes and penetrates our airspace. We have a lot of stuff in place to sort of track that. You know, it's kind of caught with our pants down when those balloons came in from China a couple months.
Now you're saying balloons like they were. There was one balloon, but then there were at least three that they mentioned that they couldn't recover, couldn't find, didn't see, and I've seen when some folks talk about them, I think they tend to conflate, you know, the balloons with the, you know, the you know, UFOs with that don't seem to have prosaic explanations. Which ones are you saying was a balloon? There was that. Okay, so there was that Chinese balloon. Looks like it's sort of carrying a school bus underneath of it.
Well, they had the one confirmed balloon that they took all the pictures of. That's the one that they waited till it went out to the Atlantic and shot it down off South Carolina or whatever.
And they recovered it, right? And we're keeping it, right?
Yeah. And then they had
the other three that they couldn't find, they shot down. They say they shot down, but they couldn't find those, right?
Yeah, they might have been too small. One concern was the altitude too, that someone cited that they were allegedly flying at and that they were shot down at. But those could have been what's called a boundary layer pressure balloon. It's a different type of balloon, and it could have been one of those to these types of balloons, which are smaller and they can go at higher altitude, and also change their altitude. So they can they have like mechanical ballast, so they can actually change their air pressure and thus their buoyancy, so they can change altitudes, so they can basically move themselves around into more preferable wind currents if they want.
Is there any evidence that those were balloons? I'm not sure that I think they've said they don't know what they were, right?
Well, there's no evidence anymore of what they were because they blew them out of the sky with Sidewinder missiles. But I think they might have done that on purpose so that they could have this sort of, mystery, and this, it coincided with this whole UFO thing. Because I think, I don't know, I just have a feeling that a lot of this, the fact that it happened on Super Bowl weekend, is that a coincidence, man? Like, I'm sorry to be
I don't
like a
know.
conspiracy theorist on this, but like, we shot down 3 UFOs on Super Bowl weekend,
I think though the reason that they just happened to do that was because didn't they tune their radar in a certain way that
And why is this happening since? Is this still happening? I mean, obviously China's still trying to spy and send these surveillance balloons, right? Did they succeed in their mission? Because these things were apparently, scanning lasers to, like, basically ground scanners that could map out the ground with, augmented GPS systems, so they can map out the GPS of the ground and take more high def pictures of certain sites. But they also had, like DRFM tech on board, which is digital. That's digital radio frequency memory. So they're scooping up and they're skimming for all our digital radio frequency waves. They're skimming all the radio frequency waves and capturing those digital signals on memory, so they can analyze those that data later.
Wow.
And they transmit it back, so they can tell what's around. They can be like, all right, well, we got fob swipes and other things that are giving off these RF frequencies, which we picked up, so they get a general sense of what kind of RF activity is going on in that area as well. So lots of intelligence collection. And by the way, you did some intelligence where you were in the military, right? And you were in Iraq, correct?
I was in Afghanistan. Yeah, I was a JAG. I started out as a combat engineer, then the Army sent me to law school, and then I finished my career as a JAG. Yeah, right. So I did, I did a lot of everything, like prosecution, contract law, operational law, rules of engagement, that kind of stuff. So, and like I was saying too, like, it was strange to me that, that Grusch couldn't tell Congress what he knew because of, they wouldn't let him in, or they prevented him from going into a skiff. Because I mean, we were talking about a little earlier, and because we can, and we were in Afghanistan, and we could talk about classified stuff as long as we didn't spill it. So I mean, I don't know. There might be special intelligence caveats to some of the information that he was privy to that say you can't you can't discuss this or whatever unless you're in a secured facility. So there may be something just super sensitive.
They basically they wouldn't let him talk about anything. They said it's classified and you can't talk about it outside the skiff. So he said, well, I'll be happy to go in the skiff with all these congressmen. We'll have and we'll go over all this. So we were all excited about there was going to be the skiff after party, and Grusch was going to spill all these secrets to all our congressmen. Well, what they did is they pulled Grusch's clearance, and they said, well, you can't test.
Well, who's they? That's a big deal. Like,
yeah,
who's they? I don't know who they is.
Yeah, that's a good point.
I don't know if they did pull his clearance, because apparently he's a GS-15, which is a supervisor in the Geospatial Intelligence Agency. So I gotta believe he's got a security clearance of some kind. I mean, I did TSSCI when I was, a JAG in Afghanistan, and for most of my time in the military. So, mine's expired now, but it's just weird to me that that it would be, that they would pull his clearance. Like, is that like trying to prevent him from talking to Congress? That's just, to me, that's
almost what it seems like. It seems like a dirty maneuver. And
but that would fit with the narrative of what he's saying, though.
That's illegal, because he can then sue for that, because that security clearance is something that's hard to get, and there's
that's what his whistleblower complaint's about. That's why he's a whistleblower, is because essentially, just reading between the lines, right? I don't have any of the reports or anything, but my sense is that his whistleblower report is from retaliation by senior Pentagon officials in general. So So he's identified as somebody in the Air Force who's supposed to do oversight of these contractors that are working on these special access programs. And I guess some of them are telling him that, hey, we've got stuff going on that you don't know about. And so he starts bringing them in. I guess he brings them into the skip and he puts them under oath and starts taking statements from them, asking them questions, and they're, writing it down. And so, but then I think he's told to back off by the, by senior generals, or he's removed. Apparently, I mean, obviously the contract companies, the aerospace contractors, the defense contractors didn't like that. And apparently the generals or the commanders, the people who are, in positions of authority, military officials over Grusch, hammered him, like, fired him or pulled his clearance or, took unfavorable action. But because he wasn't doing anything except for what his job he was supposed to do, he was being reprised against for, for essentially holding these contractors to the standard and making them show them their homework or whatever.
Yeah.
And so that makes him a whistleblower. But when he complains that, hey, look, essentially, and I'll tell you what you read between the lines, what the underlying issue is that very senior generals, right, in the Pentagon, they're looking for post-military retirement employment in the defense contracting industry, getting that 7-8 figure job. And so I think the issue is that they're doing the bidding of, these defense contractors. They're padding they're accepting invoices that are over invoicing, the $7,000 toilet seats and all this other stuff.
Yeah.
And they're signing off on these generals, not in the hopes, but I mean, essentially it's a bribe, right? It's like, it's the capture of Pentagon and the military by the military industrial complex. Yeah. So they're signing these contracts and overpaying these defense contractors. And then when they retire, they go get a job with that defense contractor somewhere. And those contractors want to maintain exclusivity on the alien tech that's recovered and all that. And they don't want oversight. They don't want any other companies to know about it.
And the government doesn't want that either. They want it all to be locked up with them where it can't be accessed by FOIA. And they can't. Right.
Well, I mean, when you say the government wants that, I think the issue that Congress, because certainly Congress doesn't want that. Congress does not want that. So when you say the government, so it's really the military industrial complex. Yeah. The defense contractors are essentially buying the generals so that the generals sign the checks, right? And then they get paid sort of under the table, with padded invoices to do all this other, R&D and reverse engineering and that kind of stuff. That is what Congress cares about. And so the crazy thing is that like you and me, and I think most of the public's like, what, aliens, what, spaceships, like, holy crap, what, And so you have people who are saying, oh, Grusch is a liar. There's no such thing as that and whatever. Well, and Congress is going, wait. How are they doing it? How are they sending, what's the tradecraft of the overbilling look like? Who are the contractors that are doing it? Who are the people? Who are the companies? And so
NDAs, this is a big thing, because it looks like if you try to go the official channels and sign these whistleblower documents and go to try testify and not disclose anything, they still prevent you from talking. So like I guess,
when you say NDA, a non-disclosure agreement is a contractual agreement, and usually it's between private folks. There's I am not aware of non-disclosure agreements issued by the government, right? It's just security clearances. If you spill classified information, it's a crime, and they're going to throw you in jail.
Yeah.
And so,
if it's classified because it's a deep illegal black program, then are they legally? Yeah, that's a question for the lawyers. If you're legally allowed to leak that classified information, if it's disclosing a crime, because yeah, that's a tricky territory there. But it just gets into the question about how do people out there, leak this information. Edward Snowden felt helpless when he saw his boss, James Clapper, there testify to Congress that the NSA spy program wasn't really collecting data on U.S. citizens to the extent that we now know they were, because Edward Snowden decided to leak those documents when he saw his boss lie, and he's like, well, I can show this, but he did it. Edward Snowden's whistleblowing is sort of a different tactic or approach, and he's gotten a lot of even insults from other people in the intelligence community who said he's a traitor for what he did and the way he did it and everything. But honestly, do you think that it would have got? I think they would have been able to cover up if he tried to go official channels with that information. They would have covered it up, or they would have killed his ass. You know what I mean?
Well, I mean, it was just like the guys in that one that that British outfit you're talking about, where they all went to a meeting and then they just got whacked. It happens, right? It happens. And so that's why Grusch said, I'm going public. Yeah. That's why Grusch said, I'm going public, because essentially I'm going to tell everybody. And, Ross Coulthart really kind of saved his life, right? By interviewing him and getting it on News Nation so that everybody heard it, because now, it doesn't make any sense to kill Grusch, because it's going to do is prove everything he said was right. And it's going to point the finger even more at, at probably the aerospace industry. Right. And so,
absolutely.
And so that was why Grusch was a whistleblower. That's why he did go public. And it was because he's getting threats against his life, and he's no dummy, man. He knows. I mean, I'm convinced. I did a podcast episode called Death Before Disclosure, and it was about how I came to the conclusion that JFK was killed for, his memo to the CIA saying, hey, we're going to show the Russians, or we're going to show the Soviets, all of our UFO stuff, and NASA, I want you to help them do it. 9 days later, JFK was shot. He was killed, and so, I mean, that's crazy now. But the time that happened, it was because I'm convinced, and nobody really talks about this, but the FBI was still run by J. Edgar Hoover until 1972. And J. Edgar Hoover was a McCarthyist, better dead than red guy. You know what I mean? So he would have seen that as absolute treason to show the Soviets, our UFO, our tech. And so, but I'm convinced though. And of course, did the FBI even lift a finger to find, somebody whacked a sitting president, and, they're like, oh, it's this guy, yeah, it was, anyway, you might check it out. I bet that you'll hear a couple things that you haven't heard other places, but I'm convinced that was why JFK was killed. And I think that's part of the reason that it's still not coming out, is because it was us. I think it was, I don't know who
has to be the reason
else pulled the trigger.
If it was anything else, then it would have been declassified and they wouldn't be hiding documents still. And especially the George Joannides file, because that really connects a lot of this to private aerospace. I can get into the JFK assassination a whole nother time. I won't do a deep dive on that, but basically do the research on Oswald and a guy named Roscoe White, who was his buddy in the Civil Air Patrol, and the whole connection with the Civil Air Patrol, which was set up by Harold Byrd, who owned the School Book Depository building and was Admiral Byrd's cousin. And, he set up the Civil Air Patrol and was all interested in all this private aerospace. Some real interesting connections to Texas oil, big oil, private aerospace contractors, CIA anti-Castro Cuban groups, this Alpha 66 CIA-trained assassination team, the hit squad, some of these guys apparently in the crowd there. And there's a lot of stuff that is just too weird to think.
The thing that really cinched it for me was that there was an APB with a perfect description of Oswald 15 minutes after the shot was fired.
Yeah.
And the guy who allegedly identified him said that he noticed him looking suspicious in the crowd 30 minutes before the shooting, right? Like you wouldn't even notice anybody in a crowd in Dallas 30 minutes before a shooting.
Nah,
And you couldn't even see him up in the window. And then when he was brought in to pick the guy out of a lineup, to pick him, he couldn't pick him out. So,
yeah.
So, and you know, Oswald and Ruby were both FBI informants, which means that the FBI could have had him wherever they needed him to go. They could have, vectored him to that building or what have you.
Well, they had him by the guns. They had him doing this gun running operation with the FBI too, like the same kind of thing that this gun running op. So he gets the guns in the mail to him, so that way they have him with the Mannlicher Carcano rifle, and tie it to him. So there's lots of ways that like it looks like he was set up as a patsy by the CIA, and that he had lots of time.
Yeah, I think it was the FBI. I really do. And people say the CIA.
The embassy there. Didn't Oswald make a phone call to the embassy, and it was a recording of it, and it's still like lost in the files somewhere?
I don't know.
Yeah,
I don't know.
There's a lot, because Oswald was in New Orleans at the Fair Play for Cuba, handing out the flyers for anti-Castro. Then he was the next day handing out pro-Castro flyers. So he was definitely involved in some kind of intelligence operations related to the Cuban issue, and that puts him right in the bed with MK, not MK Ultra, but MJ Wave or JM Wave.
I don't know who that is. Who's that?
That's Operation Zapata, which was the Bay of Pigs invasion. Now, as you know, CIA set up a whole invasion of the Bay of Pigs. They invaded Cuba to try to overthrow Castro. But they failed because Kennedy wouldn't send in, backup from the military. So a lot of the CIA's people died, and a few of them escaped with their lives, but have had all their buddies that they trained with for 5 years and planned for this invasion died, and they were all pissed at JFK and blamed him for it. So those were dangerous guys like David Sanchez Morales. And I told I said I wasn't going to get into this, but here I am.
Well, I mean, that just goes to show you that if they needed more shooters, right, which they did, because there's no way that one guy fired 3 rounds, and I talk about like where each round was found and how there was one round that was in the sidewalk, but then there was 3 bullet holes in the windshield. So it's definitely more than one shooter, more than 3 rounds. And well, I mean, that just goes to show you that if they needed shooters, there were probably CIA guys that were mad enough to do it. So, I mean, that seems completely consistent with the notion that, it was.
The Civil Air Patrol connection to Oswald is what did it for me as well. That was just like, man, all right. And then Dulles being put in charge of the investigation, dude, he was like the top suspect for who would have killed Kennedy. So, there's a lot of to be said about the government cover up there. And
I mean, we'll know when those files come out. I think we'll know. I think we'll find out.
I think this all needs to come out, man. I think it's like almost time that people, got pitchforks and marched down there and demanded, all this, the real stuff, because the dog and pony show that they're putting on for disclosure right now, it's almost comical. But I want to switch gears because I think we've talked enough. Is there anything else you want to say about the hearing, Brad, and then?
No, I just I just think it's really, really interesting that because some folks are focused on, are there really aliens, or are there recovered craft, or but then I think Congress and a lot of folks who are looking at this are thinking, dude, is our military getting bribed by the military industrial complex, and who's actually running the military? You know what I mean? Like, I think those are huge, huge questions. And, it's going to be interesting to see where Congress goes with this. But I would personally like to see some presidential leadership. I'd like to see the FBI, like, you know, if that report's in the possession of the government, where Grusch is saying it's these contractors, it's these companies, where is the FBI executive dragnet? Why are they not, you know, arresting all of these executives and, you know, picking up warrants and kicking in doors and finding all the, you know, alien artifacts? If it's true, like, where is that? You know, that's what I want to see. I want to see some executive action. I think the president needs to take some responsibility and make something happen. We shouldn't be waiting around for hearings. You know, you just need testimony from one witness to have probable cause. If that witness is believed, to start cutting subpoenas and warrants and start arresting people and searching, you know? So that's what I'd like to see, you know, and then we'll know once and for all, hey, do they have ships or don't they have ships? You know what I mean? We don't need to argue about it. We don't need to argue whether Grusch is credible or not. Let's just listen to what he says and go
listen to what he says and say, hey, like, well, why don't we subpoena the people that should know and bring them down here, and who's he talking
or
about?
just issue warrants for their arrest, bring them downtown, and then, because I mean, you're talking about he's making accusations of fraud, like of contract fraud and stuff. The FBI could go arrest him for that, like right today. And then
absolutely,
you know, the Pentagon can't pass an audit in the first place. So it shouldn't just be aerospace folks. It should be military it should be commanders too. It should be.
No, this is interesting because they have the contracts to manage all of the national laboratories, the following, Department of Energy labs. So any kind of like UFO material that made its way to one of our national labs, or any free energy or anti-gravity device that got invented at one of our labs, they'd be able to lock it down like instantly and file national security, patent.
I think they need to dragnet those executives, drag them in, start questioning them, and just say, hey, like, you get 50 executives. Guess what? The first guy who sings walks. And then you separate them all, and then they're all just going to sing, because they all want to be rich. They are just going to want to go home and quit.
The thing is, like, if you
spend their money.
The thing is, right, normally when there's criminal under investigation, they put them in jail, and then all their phone calls or communications are recorded and they go right to the DA's office. So that would be amazing, because they wouldn't be able to call anyone or cover their tracks if they got arrested. You know what I mean? Because everything would be recorded, so they would be cut off. And I don't know, it'd be almost better if you could let them do that and then trace all their tracks and see.
Yeah, I mean, I just think it's time for. I think there's enough for arrests. I think there's enough for search warrants. I think, if you dragnetted the C-suite of all those companies and just said, if those executives were worried about going to jail, they would sing like canaries, and that's a fact. They would,
it's true.
I think a lot of it's going to be in anonymous holding companies and shell companies and stuff.
But those executives are going to know.
Problem is, like, a lot of the congressmen and lobbyists and people, they'll use the same sort of things and loopholes, so they're not going to want to get rid of those.
Yeah, a lot of them use theirs for, like, to make money off the systems too. So a lot of them get.
Yeah, but I'm sure they would give it up if it was between that and going to jail, because
true.
If you're in jail and being convicted of treason. I mean, because people that are that rich, it's legacy. It's they're just going to want it all to go away, and so they'll do. You know what I mean? They're not gonna. They're not gonna want to do time. They're not gonna. They're gonna be like, hey, well, can we make a deal?
I mean, if they're a public figure, maybe, but if they're anonymous folks, they're not going to care too much about that, because they're anonymous.
And same with the generals too. The generals they're not going to want to lose their military pension. They're not going to want to go to jail and be totally unemployable. Like, they'll sing too.
People who are actually, like, in charge of this
stuff,
like, no one knows their names. Like, they're pretty much anonymous, even though they have ownership of anyway, you'll see.
Yeah. I mean, if an officer gets charged with a crime, they're like, oh shit, I fucked up, didn't I? Yeah, man, you did. you know.
Look at
So-
BlackRock,
But anyways,
too. The holding companies are in BlackRock. And other big
yeah,
companies.
BlackRock has a lot of that
Investment
stuff
firms.
locked up in, and then
Investment
also
firms.
Carlyle Group. Remember the Carlyle Group bought out EG&G, as you know, if you look it up. Anyways, I don't want to get too deep into
Oh,
these,
sure, yeah.
these organizations. I mean, we already people who do the research on this stuff already know who these people are, and the people that are just getting into this now still have a lot of research left to do. No, not just Grusch.
No, not just Grusch. Grusch is just all that is that's enough evidence, probable cause for a warrant.
Yeah,
And so
it is.
and so you'd get an arrest warrant, and then you'd bring somebody in for questioning.
So
And it would be enough for a search warrant too, to say, hey, where's the artifact? You know what I mean?
speaking of
So-
probable cause, what do you think probably caused David Chester's mustache to get so curly and wild like that?
I used to have an uncle, man, with a mustache like that.
Out of control. Man. You know what? Half the comments are about the guy's mustache, dude. But anyway, seriously, go on Concrete. My buddy David Chester of Quantum Gravity Research was just on there the other day.
These guys think they have anti-gravity?
No, dude. Well, he's presented on APEC before. He's a real smart
okay.
guy. I actually recommended him as a guest for Daniel to get on his podcast. And I'm also recommending some other colorful characters for him to get on as well. So definitely go check out that Concrete podcast. If you haven't seen the Concrete podcast interview with me, it's not my best. I made a lot of errors in that. I talked about it in the stream that I did after that came out because people commented about a couple mistakes that were made. But you know what? I'm going to go on there again at some point and talk about more cool stuff. And we're going to get a whole bunch of whistleblowers from the scientific community and people who know stuff to go on and talk about some real cool stuff. But yeah, definitely go on there and check out this interview he did with David Chester. David Chester does some amazing work, and he's an amazing mathematician.
That's awesome. That's awesome. Hey, I mean, anytime you guys want to, I'm about ready. Well, right now I'm talking to the patent office to get my patent for my anti-gravity engine. And right now I've only got about, I had a 2.5 pound swing, and then I had the fourth engine I made. I had a sustained about 0.5 pound. That just, I took a couple videos and I posted those, but I'd be real interested to see, because I think I got it. And so if I get this DARPA funding for my anti-gravity engine, what I'm going to do is what I really need to do to make it sing is, create a nano layer 3D printed alloy that's just essentially sheets of hexagonal molecular structure, like either graphene or magnesium, nickel, zinc, bismuth,
nitrate.
Yep. Anything that's a hexagon, really.
Why hexagonal? Yeah, why hexagonal?
Well, if you look on YouTube, there's Dr. Lawrence Eves. This is where I got this. It was Dr. Lawrence Eves of University of Nottingham. And he's a graphene researcher. And what he says is when you put the graphene and you pass a magnetic field through it, it separates out left and right-handed electrons. There you go. That's the guy right there.
2010 Nobel Prize in Physics.
Well, is there talking about?
Well, I don't think he got it. I think that left-handed electron 60 symbol is that one. Click on that.
Yeah,
and
this
then
is good. I'm gonna have to check
So
this.
this is
out.
actually like the handedness of the particle, not the spin of it, though.
Here, I'll
same
put-
thing. No, the chirality. Yeah, it's the quantum spin.
So chirality, that's different, because handedness.
The video
that
if
is-
people want to
It's
watch.
the same.
That's a deep.
You'll
That's
see.
particle, but it's not quite the spin. You can have a left-handed or right-handed electron with an up or down spin or whatever. That's a separate thing.
Yeah, we're talking about the chirality. Yeah, so if you just listen to it, like maybe it's like 5 minutes or something. I don't know if you want to play him, but he talks about the graphene, teasing out the left-handed electrons,
Interesting.
And the great thing is that when you do that, he says that it holds that left-handed electron in a cyclotron orbit in the magnetic field. In this video, he tells you that.
So left-handed versus right-handed.
I don't know. That's what he's left-handed. And then if you go to PBS space-time,
Yeah.
then and you look at the Higgs mechanism, then Dr. Matt O'Dowd tells you at about 2 minutes in, look up Higgs mechanism.
Yeah, left-handed versus right-handed.
Right there. Now put it at like 2 minutes.
With the 7-year-old one?
Yep, that's the one.
2 minutes?
Yeah, about 2 minutes. Right there.
The
Yep, there you go.
part. Yeah.
Yeah. So
here, let me play it. So people,
play it.
I gotta reshare it in here so audio shared. All right.
Yeah, go ahead, play that.
Field theory, as it stood in the 1950s, gave a perfect description of the electron, and yet predicted that the electron should have no mass. The basic QFT equations of all of the components of the atom leave them massless. As we'll see in the next couple of episodes, this masslessness means that particles should travel only at the speed of light and experience no time. Their clocks should be frozen. But these particles are distinctly not timeless. They evolve. Take the electron. It has this type of intrinsic quantum spin that we call chirality. And this can either be clockwise or counterclockwise relative to the direction of motion. We call this left-handedness or right-handedness. Now, that spin constantly flips back and forth. The electron evolves, meaning it does experience time, so it must have mass. Also, we've weighed it. We've measured that mass directly. But a different sort of changeability is the only way that we know that the tiny neutrino has mass.
Here it comes.
It was the measurement of those neutrino oscillations that won the 2015 Nobel Prize in Physics. Now take the photon. It is definitely massless. It travels at the speed of light and it experiences its entire existence in an instant. It undergoes no internal evolution. It has spin, but the spin never flips. A photon only changes if it bumps into something else. But the photon and the electron are both just excitations in their own fields. So why does the electron have mass and the photon not? Why does the electron evolve? There are different ways to interpret it, but perhaps the simplest is to say that while the photon can cross the entire observable universe without bumping into a single thing, the electron is never not bumping into things. There's something in the substrate of space everywhere that impedes the electron. It's the Higgs field. To understand how this works, we need to come back to this spin flip thing. Here, I need to tell you about a really odd fact about the universe. It's not ambidextrous. It actually cares whether a particle has left or right-handed chirality. See, left-handed electrons have this extra little something compared to right-handed electrons. It's called weak hypercharge, which, by the way, was the name of my high school garage band. It's like regular electric charge, which lets all electrons feel the electromagnetic force, except in this case, lets only left-handed electrons feel the weak nuclear force. This cosmic asymmetry is incredibly weird, and it's part of a mystery called parity violation. It's an open question why the universe cares which direction you're spinning. In fact, it cares so much that it won't let an electron flip from left to right unless it can ditch its weak hypercharge, or flip back again unless it can pick some up. But where does this charge come from and where does it go to? You probably guessed, the Higgs field. The Higgs field is really weird. While most quantum fields hover around zero in empty space, the Higgs field has a positive strength at all points in the universe. There's a little bit of Higgsiness everywhere. In some stunning quantum weirdness, this complex multi-component field not only carries the weak hypercharge, but manages to take on all possible values of this charge simultaneously. This makes the Higgs field an infinite source and sink of weak hypercharge. Our poor electron is bombarded by a flow of particles into and out of the Higgs field from all directions, giving and taking away the weak hypercharge on infinitesimally short timescales. On its own, the electron would travel at light speed, but trapped in this Higgs field buzz, the electron feels mass. Honestly, this is a pretty wild story. An invisible and infinite ocean of charge that we've never heard of.
So the way my anti-gravity works, right? And if you listen to that Dr. Eves lecture that I pointed you at, he'll tell you that when you pass a magnetic field through a hexagonal molecular structure,
An
like
electron.
graphene. Yeah, maybe it's like 2 minutes in. Try that. Try 2 minutes. I think that's where it is.
Bonded to a nearest neighbor by a strong covalent bond, and we end up with this rather beautiful hexagonal pattern. Each one of these hexagons we call a unit cell. The idea is this is a periodic structure that has got this very high symmetry along the axis. And the electrons in graphene, we can get free electrons. Some of the electrons are stuck in these bonds, but we can have some free electrons that can move around inside the lattice. So that's what the electrons are doing. These chiral states, the states are the electronic states of graphene. Electrons like to sit in states, whether they're free electrons going around in space, or in this lattice where they're moving as traveling waves, they're free particles. And we can think of the electron as being a ball of charge. We don't know how small it is, actually. There's still nobody, as far as we know, it could even be a singularity. And the electron has got several properties when it's moving in free space. It carries a mass, which is about 10 to the minus 30 kilograms. It's about 1/2000th of the mass of a proton. It's got a charge, of course, and that's really its interesting property. It carries a big charge despite its small mass. It carries a quantum of charge, E, or minus E more strictly. The electron also spins just like a cricket ball. We can spin a cricket ball. The electron could spin either this way, in which case its spin is up, or it can spin the other way, in which case its spin is down. So it does off break and leg break. I don't suppose any Americans will understand that, but I think you could do similar things with a baseball as well. Well, because we created a single sheet of graphene, in the device, as I'll explain in a moment, we pile graphene up with another material called boron nitride. But the electron is just moving freely in the plane of the graphene. It can go in this direction or that direction as long as it stays in the plane. And the remarkable thing about electrons in graphene is that their speed is always the same, no matter what energy they got. The electrons, of course, as you can imagine, are going very fast, but it's only 1/300th of the speed of light. They can be going in this direction, or this direction. So if we do nothing to the sample, there's no net current flowing, except at a microscopic level. However, if we apply a voltage, if we bias this end of the layer negative with a battery and this end positive, then an electron will move towards the positive contact. So, and then it will drift. But a drift velocity depends on how often it's scattered. Now, the other key thing about this sheet, when you exfoliate graphene from graphite by what's called the Scotch tape method, you can just peel off layer and layer of graphene. If you've got the right type of graphite to start with, you can have very, very clean and pure graphene, and then the electrons can travel long distances, much further than the distance between two atoms. Say, they can go for a micron or so without scattering under certain conditions. I think the next thing to talk about is what are these Landau states? Well, I've said that electrons can be in free particle states. They can travel as Schrödinger waves down the crystal in a certain direction, and we can describe that motion as a wave-like motion according to Schrödinger's equation. So electrons can travel freely as in graphene, but in hydrogen atoms, they're bound. So if my fist is a proton of hydrogen atom, then the electron can orbit around that, and then it's in a localized state, and that state now has a well-defined energy level.
Okay, this is
whereas when electrons are moving freely, depending on what their momentum is, they can have more or less any energy. They can have a small energy or large energy, depending on their momentum. So those are states. Now, our electrons in graphene.
So let's hear your perspective on this, because we're going to get striked and it's going to get shut down pretty soon. So.
Oh yeah, I don't want to get you in trouble. Anyway, so what he says in like the next minute is when you put a magnetic field to the graphene, right here is right there's where he says it right there. I think.
So this is the most replayed section right here.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Damn, I already played a little bit of it. Let's just back off for a second.
Sure. Well, so anyway, so what he tells you is that when the magnetic field passes perpendicular, those left-handed electrons separate and they sit there and just orbit in the magnetic field. They just sit there in what they call a cyclotron orbit. So essentially, that amp that I'm talking about that I need to build, essentially one of these, imagine a layer of graphene, but then just nano layers of other stuff, right? Of other similarly hexagonal molecular structure, sort of, layered alloy.
Using
And
boron
so
nitrate.
what that's going to do is that's going to essentially, it's like a bug catcher for left-handed electrons, right? It's going to jam my whole field and give my magnetic field in my Faraday disk, and it's going to pack it full of these left-handed electrons.
Yeah.
Now, the left-handed electron, right? You just heard Dr. O'Dowd say that the left-handed electron, the Higgs field is pulling on the left-handed electron. That's what's slowing it down, right? And we know from the third law, Newton's third law, that if the left-handed electron is getting pulled on by the Higgs field, that means the left-handed electron is pushing back on the Higgs field too. And so the Higgs field is the only quantum field that has a non-zero vacuum expectation value, right? And we think the scientific consensus is that it's 246 gigaelectron volts in a vacuum, but it's not 246 gigaelectron volts. It's negative 246 gigaelectron volts. And so that's my hypothesis. That's my theory. It's a theory because I've actually reduced mass. So I can say that there's some experimental validation there. And so I fill my electromagnetic field that I created with a Faraday disk. I fill it with left-handed electrons by passing the magnetic field through layers and layers and layers of hexagonal molecular structure metal. And then I use a harmonic loading. I use an oscilloscope to essentially vibrate those molecules, to vibrate those left-handed electrons with a pulse of electricity. And so by shaking, how like when you put food in a microwave, right? You bombard it with microwaves, little microwaves, like, they hit and they bounce off the molecules of your food. And it's that shaking of your food, your little molecule, that's putting energy into that food. That's what heats it up. It's just shaky, right? And so what I'm doing is I'm shaking those left-handed electrons. And if I can shake 246 gigaelectron volts into those left-handed electrons by essentially pushing them like a kid on a swing, like resonating them, finding that resonant frequency, which is going to be gravity. And so the frequency of gravity, which is between, 1 and, 1 kilohertz and 200 kilohertz or so. I mean, you can find, there's going to be different resonant frequencies, but at the end of the day, the gravity wave frequency, you shake those electrons, you can shake 246 gigaelectron volts. If I'm right about the Higgs field and it's negative, you put 246 gigaelectron volts into the Higgs field, you drop it to 0. And that's the ground state. And if the Higgs field is 0, from what Dr. O'Dowd said, whatever's in that field can't have mass then, because there's no mass, because the Higgs field can't hold on to it. So that's my theory of anti-gravity right there in a nutshell.
Well, it's better than I like it better than the Bob.
It's that easy, dude. It is that easy.
Bob Lazar's got a new project. He's Project Gravitor. He announced it on Twitter. Bob Lazar's been blowing up on Twitter lately again, as on both sides. I guess George Knapp admitted he's a liar too. People saw. Well, that was an old video though. That was from. That wasn't anything new. Anyways, it seems like they're trying to compete with alt propulsion and APEC and stuff, while also not acknowledging it or giving it any perceived legitimacy, which is kind of troubling. But anyways, well, good luck to them. They got a lot of work to do to catch up to us and where we're at. Sabina Holzenfelder, publicly said that she thinks this new room temperature superconductor is most likely going to be some misidentified diamagnetic material, or maybe
I think she might have to eat those words. I mean, I know that was her prediction, and she wasn't.
She's obviously, she's very often, on the, naysaying.
She's a skeptic. Yeah, she's a skeptic. I think it's fair, but I think I saw an article where 2 labs have reproduced it already.
Yeah, so that's big. So we've gotten a number of papers out. If you've been following it on Twitter, China had a replication early this morning, and then there was another one in China that's replicated it. So I want to kind of show what we got going on for our
let's see it.
Replication and setup, because that's our first time really showing off all this. But here we got the vacuum furnace, which we ordered to fire certain ceramics that require a vacuum atmosphere for the firing process. So we had this on order already, luckily, and it's one of the key things that you actually need to make this lanternite glass. So it was actually pretty awesome that we had this, and so
Very cool, man. Very cool.
yeah. So this thing's it's
Congratulations.
220 volts, 15 amps, and it runs a vacuum pump at the same time, so you can get it down to pretty near vacuum, and it will do 1750 Celsius continuously. So yeah, this thing's a beast. Can't wait to fire it up and bake some lanternite glass in here.
Yeah, and you know what, man, even if you don't get it totally pure or whatever, like, I mean, it's just not going to be a complete superconductor. It's still going to be amazing. You know what I mean? That's awesome.
Yeah, if we get, even like they said, they had to break their samples apart, and they got like a couple little superconductive flakes in the mix and stuff. So
Yeah, the way that it appears to be done is they have a sulfate salt melt, and the crystals slowly crystallize out of that. So that's why it takes so long. It's like forming crystals in the earth, like it takes a long time. So
that's awesome, man. Congratulations, guys. You got a nice looking facility too.
We got a little furnace down here, which we were going to try it in, but we'd have to do it in these sealed glass tubes. So we got the quartz tubes and the vacuum, the high vacuum pump that we were going to, evacuate some samples in those and try to be able to do it in this oven if we needed to. But hopefully we can get the vacuum oven up and running. There's an electrical issue right now about the power, but luckily it's only 240 volt. It's only 220 volts, so it's not 380 Chinese electric conundrum. So
man, congratulations. Yeah. That's gonna be awesome. I can't wait to see what you guys do.
Well, we're pumped, dude. Everyone else is pumped about this, and so we went and we actually tried to make some lead oxide. That's the sample over behind this, but we actually ordered some more pure lead oxide, yellow lead oxide, so we can and we also have some copper hydroxide, which is another ingredient in the recipe, which we made up. So we should be ready to go as soon as we get maybe tomorrow. Are we going to mix it up tomorrow? What's the deal?
Yeah, let's do that. We'll see what we can do about the power. And then
man, that is awesome. You be careful, man. Don't breathe that stuff in.
No, so the other thing too is we're going to have to move the vacuum furnace.
We can put the vacuum furnace output through the bubbler and get anything that's coming out of there.
Yeah, we can recover all the lead from the fumes through a bubbling system.
We got to put that bubbler system open source. I'm surprised how many open source projects don't.
Man, I just don't want you to get sick. Just be careful, dude.
Yeah, I don't want to get anyone else sick or have any complaints against what we're doing here. We're lucky enough to have this space for right now until we can get our own space with a bigger lab area. But this is good for now. We got some, a lot of interested people interested in UFO technology and UA, the disclosures that's coming out, and people want, people want to know that there's people out there that actually, understand this stuff and can figure it out. And we've been studying it a long time, and I've got an awesome group of people that I've met over the years that we're working together on this stuff, and it's really coming together, man.
Yeah, man. If I get that DARPA funding too, and if you guys want to experiment with some of my designs, like, you're more than welcome to. You know what I mean? Like, I want you to.
Heck yeah. Well, we'd love to. Yeah, this lab's cool, man. We're gonna be able to that vacuum furnace, $8,000 piece of equipment. So that's I can't wait to.
That's very cool, dude.
We can replicate that superconductor and make something out of this. It'll maybe pay for itself. So that'll be awesome.
Yeah, man. That's so awesome, man. You talked to Mark?
Yeah, Mark's super psyched. He's actually wants to come up here and help out because this is I don't know, everyone's like,
So we used to all go down to his place.
we
and,
were like we
camp
were all
out in his
skeptical,
lab.
man, and we're like hopeful, you know, when the red matter thing came out with the lutectite or whatever, the lutetium hydride or whatever. Remember the
Shoot,
red
dude, I
matter
don't
thing, the lutetium. We're not making that one. That one's a little hard, but this one was like, wow, this is really simple.
It's in the can-do category, right? I mean,
you know, it's a low-hanging fruit, and we can do it. We have everything we need to do it. And
We originally got the furnace for making calcium aluminate electride.
yeah.
So if you need
it's-
any calcium aluminate electride, let me know.
yeah, so that's what we originally got it for, and then when this came along, we were like super psyched that other labs are trying it and doing it. We're like, you know what, we can do this too. So and I gotten a lot of motivation and encouragement from people on Twitter and here.
oh yeah, man. Can you imagine? I mean, you guys could just set up a website and just start selling it, you know, because
Like, not even on
colleges are gonna want to, you know, experiment with it or whatever. Like
Yeah.
you guys could sell. You guys could, if you can start cranking it out, you know.
Yeah,
that'd be
I'm looking
awesome.
on social media, and like 5 people contacted me about the superconductor. It's like it's meant to happen.
Yeah, man, victory, man. I'm so happy for you guys.
They
I
can't
hope you crush
silence
it.
all of us, man. And this is the thing. This is what we created this channel and the APEC conference and all this for. Man, this is where it's all open source. This is the open source. And yeah, this is great. So this is my friend Michael's lab that you just was on camera speaking.
Mhm.
And it's classified.
Nah, not really.
No.
It's Massachusetts, right? That's where you guys are.
We're in Massachusetts. So
Yeah.
you guys, you're out that way. Just you can email me at thealienscientist@gmail.com if you're interested in collaborating, or you know, we got quite enough people working on it. But I don't know if you have anything like important or crucial to add, you know, we got enough interns, man. We took a lot of interns on, and some real capable people, some real smart students that are working here right now. But if you got anyone, actually, you know what? If anyone is an expert at KiCad, reach out to me. I need some help. And, you know,
Might as well.
you know.
Is it for CNC? You're trying to
KiCad is actually it's for building software circuit boards. So we need to build some circuit boards. I need help designing and building some circuit boards. So I have it mostly done, but I just need someone who knows KiCad a little bit better so we can get these circuit boards printed and made for another project. Yeah. So anyone, we need help with that. If anyone, we also need someone who's really good with hack RF and hack these software defined radio gadgets. So if you're really good with software-defined radio and Raspberry Pi Arduino systems, and setting up Unix to run, you know, hack RFs on a Raspberry Pi,
Thank you.
please get in touch with us. You know, thealienscientist@gmail.com. So we have a lot of projects that we could use specific people with specific skills and talents for. But yeah, you got to have the right. So you'll be read into the program more when you if you volunteer. So yeah, we don't need to get into details. So it's all, but for right now. But just know that we're doing a lot of awesome research, and we're bringing you guys results here. So
yeah, man, I'm blown away. You guys are gonna do awesome.
yeah,
Just
this
start
is cool
pumping
stuff.
out that glass.
So I'm gonna post the StreamYard link in here for people who want to join an after party, and I'm gonna shut down the live stream unless you got anything else you want to add while we're here, Brad.
Hey, no, I mean just
Where
everybody
can people
pray for
follow
me.
you on Twitter.
Oh yeah, at Brad Vorhees
Yeah.
is Sonic Gravity. I haven't done an episode in like a month. Last one I did was like on consciousness, and But yeah, so I just got approval from the SEC. I work at the Securities and Exchange Commission. I just got ethics approval to submit my design to DARPA for funding, because I need some money to 3D print that alloy that I need with enough layers to jam that magnetic field full of left-handed electrons, because that's my left-handed electron bug catcher.
What you need is heterostructure. I think you want to make heterostructures. That's not.
I don't know what that is.
There's a professor I know who's good with that. But you want an atomic heterostructure ideally.
Dude, can you just DM me whatever that is? Because whatever that sounds like what I want. I mean, I'm not a material scientist, but I'm an engineer, so I
try with graphite yet. It should have enough of the same property.
I do. My current, I call it an anti-gravity amp, and right now what it is just a sandwich of essentially nickel and graphene layers. So it's about this thick, but what I really need is the nano layered, essentially, the hull of those UFOs. If you look at, like, Tom DeLonge bought one for the To the Stars Academy. If you Google it, you can see his fragment. It's nano layered bismuth, magnesium, and zinc. It's exactly what I need. And it's that magnetic field that passes through the hull of the ship. That's what makes them. That's what creates anti-gravity. Yeah, no, just so you know, just for all your viewers too, you're gonna see my patent. You're gonna know how to make it. You want to make one for yourself, that's fine. The only thing is if it's being commercially, marketed or whatever, I'm taking like 10%. So it's if you're selling it, it's not gonna be free. But if you just want to experiment with it and play with it and all that kind of stuff, man, go ahead, do your own. So I encourage you, please make one. I'll come in. I'll bring one of my prototypes in. You guys can play with it, especially if I get that amp made, and you guys can live stream it, and we will blow it up, dude. Seriously, I'm telling you, once I get my amp, it's going to be ridiculous. I guarantee you, things going to hit the ceiling.
When things hit the ceiling, you got to come up here to our lab and
oh yeah.
I'll fly you up.
What's this about? Why not try ultrasound on that thing? Maybe stick it on a piezo.
You're talking over my head, man. I'm not sure what you mean.
Oh, if you're getting these left-handed electrons, you're getting them all in one spot. Why not just use a piezoelectric transducer to shake it back and forth?
Yeah, I guess you could create a signal like that too. Yeah, but I think if the frequency, but I guess it depends what kind of frequency we need. So I was using an oscilloscope so I could test the frequency to see where I might be hitting resonance.
Like kilohertz. Most of those are going to be kilohertz response functions for macroscopic piezoelectric stuff. I know there's a company. What's the name? It was just on the tip of my tongue. I did some work for them a while back. Not Flexcon. That was anyway. Piezo System Jena. That's the one. They're a German company. They have these high-powered piezos that can put out 1 kilowatt of ultrasound. It's kind of scary.
Well, that's cool, man. I'll tell you what. If you come up with an improvement, I'll help you. I'll help you with the patent. I'm a patent attorney too. So
don't fire yourselves with ultrasound. That's a lot of.
What's that?
If you have a kilowatt of ultrasound, that's
you can liquefy.
You'll just burst all your cells open.
I don't want to do that. Let's not do that.
But in terms of generating gravity, if you have something that has a strong cross section with gravitons at that point, that's something. I don't know if that low frequency will. You might want to hit it with terahertz. Actually, now that I'm thinking about it.
I tell you what, we'll play with it. You know what I mean? We'll play with it. It'll be great. We're gonna have a great time, man.
Yeah, we will.
Thanks for having me on, Jeremy, man. And
thanks for coming on. It's great to have someone who is actually at the hearing and has military and intelligence background. You're a perfect fit for the show. So the anti-gravity stuff. You're working on your own stuff, so you got to share that too.
Dude, I know we're right there, man.
And we're right here with you. So thank you so much, and I hopefully you get some awesome interns for yourself that will reach out in your area. Where are you located? We're up here in
Maryland.
Massachusetts. You're in Maryland. That's right. You said that right outside of DC. So yeah, anyone down that area, get a hold of Brad and see if he needs any help at his lab. Just send him a resume with some of your skill sets and stuff. And you can do the same thing to me at thealienscientist@gmail.com if you're interested. Thank you all for watching. Awesome work, everyone. Pat yourselves on the back, and this could be a huge jump for humanity if this superconductor, room temperature superconductor, turns out to be legit. We all have our fingers crossed and are hopeful. So awesome stuff, guys. Keep the hope alive, and have a great night.
Yeah, I forgot to mention we have a